I'm gonna have to be careful with my video title. I don't want anybody to think I'm reviewing like the emotion of love. It's just the Netflix show. My BFF Josh asked me, shall I watch Love? I don't know if I want to watch a show about relationship feelings because I'm such a bro, but I might give it a try. So I thought I would review the show. I think it's a good show, and I really enjoyed a lot of things about it. Honestly, I can't really criticize it as a show. I just sometimes found it hard to watch because the characters are so unlikable yet charming, I guess. Before I watched it, I thought of it as the show where Gillian Jacobs falls in love with a guy in real time. I think I thought it was 24. I'm not sure why I thought that. But it's basically a show about Gillian Jacobs falling in love with a guy, but it's not in real time. But it's kind of like there's less narrative, less of the screen time and plot time is devoted to their relationship than you would think, given that it's a show about their relationship. Like, we see a lot of them with other people, and we see them at work, and we see their previous relationships, and just kind of whatever else they're doing. So, it basically just makes it a really interesting show because it's kind of like, actually, I obviously didn't plan out what I was going to say very well. I think what's really interesting about the show is it really gets at the heart of the way that, the side of somebody that you see isn't necessarily like the real them. So we get to see the two main characters from like a lot of different sides, and they're very complex people. So we kind of see the way that they're seen by their partner isn't necessarily accurate, and the way that they might appear in a certain interaction isn't really, can be misleading, and we sort of get to know them well enough that like when we see them doing stuff, we can like fully understand what's going on, but the other person doesn't know what's going on. So basically the show is about Mickey, played by Gillian Jacobs, who is like a manager at a radio station and is like an alcoholic and sex addict and drug addict, and really like a super great, interesting character. Like, I feel like one of the best TV characters I can think of. And I feel like kind of what's so good about her, and like I guess the writing and acting of the show, that they're able to pull this off, is that like she often does really off the wall things that if you saw them in like a typical romantic comedy or like indie quirk fest type movie, like they would be positioned as like a cool, fun thing to do because she's so impulsive and like spontaneous. But we see that like the reason she does these kind of things is that like she has serious issues, and she's just extremely impulsive because she has a really hard time dealing with life. And so like, a lot of the time we see her do these things, and like sometimes we can kind of see how like to her friends or her boyfriend or like whoever happens to be with her at the time, like they're perceiving her as like really fun and they're like taken in by her. But like because we kind of see her whole character, we kind of see how she's actually making bad decisions, and this is kind of a symptom of like all the problems that she has. So that's really cool. Anyway, she falls in love with Gus, played by Paul Rust, who's also one of the writers of the show, with his wife. So when I watch TV shows, I usually follow along at the Onion AV Club. Like, I usually read the reviews of the episodes in the comments, just because I kind of enjoy getting some, like, other people's perspective when I'm watching TV, even if I'm not reviewing it or anything. I just like to do that. But the love comments are super annoying because like every single episode, all they do is talk about how they think Paul Rust isn't attractive enough to date Gillian Jacobs, and like, and how like, oh, he must have written the show so that he could like cast himself dating a hot girl or something like that. And it's I'm so sorry, I have a terrible cough, but I knew that it's frustrating. I know on the one hand, it's kind of a feminist issue that, like, in the media there's this really high, narrow standard of how women can look, and then there's, like, a somewhat more diverse standard for men. That's not cool, But at the same time, like, it comes off as extremely narrow and just kind of creeps me out when I feel like people talk like there's like a really objective set of rules of like what's attractive, and like I feel like people just get quite nasty in comments about Paul Rust and his appearance and how they don't think he's objectively attractive enough to attract like some of the women that he attracts in this show. And like, I don't know, honestly, it just creeps me out. And I personally find him to be an attractive guy. Sorry, I apologize. And I actually have kind of the same reaction to him as I do to Gillian Jacobs, in that I find him like such an innately like attractive and likable actor that it's kind of hard to sit down and go, wow, this character is like such a jerk. Like, I find him so charming, and I think it works in the show that like sometimes other people find him really charming. Although I think something they do really well with that character and actor is that like there's sometimes, especially when he's with Mickey, his love interest, or like with somebody that he's like first meeting or impressing, like there's sometimes when he just comes off as like so adorable. Like some of the things about him that might seem kind of like geeky or awkward are just like extremely adorable, and you just want to cuddle him. And then like, I don't know, there's just other scenes where like he's not coming off well and he's kind of doing the same type of thing, but it's just like you're just kind of uncomfortable and you kind of find him like pathetic or like manipulative, and like you can see that in this interaction that isn't working out, and like people are kind of like there's one scene where he's eating in a diner and he looks so lonely that a family asks him to eat with them. And so he goes to eat with them, but then he just acts like so creepy in his attempt to like befriend them and like connect with them, that like they're just like extremely uncomfortable and they regret reaching out to him. Yeah, it's some of the scenes like with Mickey, he is like very sweet and lovable, and then like, yeah, so it's hard because I think the other thing people tend to seem to talk about when they discuss the show is like, which character is a worse person, Mickey or Gus? Oh, by the way, I've seen this show compared to You're the Worst, which I haven't actually seen, but I think it has a similar concept of two people meet, get in a relationship, and they both obviously suck and shouldn't be together, apparently. Because that's kind of the thing of love. It focuses on the relationship. Mickey and Gus are often very excited about their relationship and they think it's great sometimes. But, like, it's kind of obvious because, like, we see everything that, like, their relationship is real bad. So I was, like, on a roll here and I totally forgot what I was just talking about. Now I'm gonna have to cut this video. Oh, right. Okay, a lot of people argue about whether Mickey or Gus is a worse person. So I think the thing is, like, Mickey obviously does worse stuff, but I think she's kind of more, to me, she's a more likable character because you can just see that she's, like, extremely messed up and has serious issues. And, like, it's not that she doesn't sometimes do, like, incredibly, like, shitty and manipulative things to other people, but at the same time, like, she's such a raw character and she's just trying to get what she thinks she wants in that moment, which is like kind of very impulsive and ever changing because she doesn't really seem to be able to cope with like stress or disappointment or even having to wait for things that she wants. But Gus, I feel like, is kind of a shitty person in a more average way. Like, he doesn't really do things like Mickey where you're like, I can't believe that that just happened. I can't believe that a person would act like that. He's more kind of like, he does stuff that's kind of selfish and shitty and manipulative in the way that like a more average person, you know, is selfish and shitty and manipulative. I personally found him really hard to take because he's a tutor for a child actor, and like, yeah, this is like, I feel like the only warning about the show, and it's like a minor part of the show, but it's like the child actor that he's tutoring is really messed up and like obviously feels connected to him because she's very isolated from other kids, so he's like her only friend, and like he just doesn't, you know, treat her with kindness even though she's this really sad child. And like, I think that was what makes it kind of impossible for me to ever like not hate Gus a little bit. But, like I said, I do find the actor really likable, so I struggle. Like, I almost feel like if I could just watch the show and just be like, Gus is an asshole, I'd be fine. But, like, I think the reason I find it so hard to watch is that, like, at times I really want to like him because Paul Rust can be, like, so appealing, and then it's just like, oh, you're so awful, and I already knew that about you. So yeah, I feel like I basically covered the show. It's a really interesting show. I know it's technically a comedy. I don't necessarily find it, like, laugh out loud funny, just, like, interesting to watch. There's a lot of side characters. It's set in LA, and there's a lot of characters who are, like, actors or otherwise involved with entertainment, so kind of focuses on that. What else? There's an Australian character who I guess is played by, like, a comedian that a lot of people really like, but I don't actually know. I don't remember her name. I guess I should have looked that up before. She's probably the main character aside from the two leads. And basically it just follows their relationship. I would say that, like, in the first season, it's a bit darker, whereas in the second season, I don't know, I think they kind of pulled back on, like, how shitty Gus was, and they made him, like, a somewhat less shitty character because it was just, like, kind of unbearable. So in the second season, they make him, like, a bit more likable and less, like, aggressively manipulative. A lot of his, like, crappy behavior is just kind of stuff that he does, and then sometimes he realizes he was wrong and stuff. But they're still kind of the same thing. Yeah, so anyway, I'd say the first season is, like, a bit darker, and in the second season they're a bit more likable, but there's still some of the same awful stuff happening. Anyway, that's kind of my description of Love. I don't know if that lets you know whether you want to watch it or not. It's interesting. I don't think it's hilarious. It can be tough to watch because the characters are so awful, but yeah, I think it really does something interesting in terms of making you think about people, you know, what am I saying here? People have lots of different sides, just like the shape that I'm making with my fingers. And, you know, sometimes you might not see all of them at the same time, especially in a romantic comedy setting. So, the show does a really interesting job capturing that, I guess.